Earlier this afternoon, we had an opportunity to interview Vice President George Bush one-on-one via satellite. We discussed several issues, including his presidential campaign and his role in the Iran-Contra scandal. The Super Tuesday primary is coming up in March, and of course North Carolina is a state involved in that primary. How much attention and time will you be focusing on our state?
I'm going to be focusing a lot on that whole conglomeration of southern states. March 8th is important. Right now we feel very strong in the South, but obviously it's front-loaded, so all candidates will be spending a lot of time in Iowa and New Hampshire, but we are not going to neglect North Carolina, South Carolina, and then on across to my state of Texas. No candidate can design a strategy to win this nomination that makes sense unless he really concentrates on doing well in the South.
And Mr. Vice President, as you're aware, many of the polls show it's a Bush-Dole race right now, and Elizabeth Dole is a North Carolina native. Do you see the state as being an uphill battle to win?
No, but I see it as a real battle to win, and I have great respect for Elizabeth. She was in the cabinet here, but wait till we unleash my wife. She's pretty tough, too.
Of course, the Congressional Club is a very conservative group based here in North Carolina. Do you have that group support right now, and if you don't, do you want it?
I think they're supporting Jack Kemp right now, and I'm like Norris Cotton. Do you remember the senator from New Hampshire? He said, I stayed up all night thinking if I could think of somebody that I didn't want to vote for me. And I want everybody to be for me, but I think that organization is for Kemp at this point, but we'll be working hard to get as many people for me as possible in North Carolina.
One of the big questions I'm sure you're facing on the campaign trail this year is about the Iran-Contra scandal, and a lot of people wondering where you stood during the whole situation when the decisions were being made in the White House and I guess even in the basement of the White House. Where do you stand on the Iran-Contra scandal?
Stand in support of the president. You know, you got to go back into time, and the concern that he and I felt about those hostages, and still feel, the thought that Buckley, who later his death was confirmed, was being tortured at the time, made us take a risk to try to free hostages. And we've always said, and I wrote the report that confirms that arms for hostages is wrong. But back at the time this thing was devised, as the report firmly points out, the concept was that it wasn't arms for hostages, and the concept was we better try to get these hostages out. So yeah, mistakes were made, and the country's moved on past that, but I've stood with the president, and maybe I'll take some shots for that, but I feel very good about it.
Vice President Bush, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in North Carolina soon.
Well, Merry Christmas to you, and thanks.
In other news, 2 people and a Spartanburg used car company have pleaded guilty to being part of a huge car fraud scheme. Lewis Mason, Sheila Henson,